Tinted visors, 1998. In the 1990s, visors exploded in popularity. Players wore them for intimidation, style, and protection against glare. Colored and mirrored visors especially made defenders look like robots, hiding their eyes from quarterbacks and receivers. But in 1998, the NFL banned all tinted and colored visors. The reason wasn't fashion, it was safety. Trainers and doctors need to see players' eyes immediately after an injury, especially when evaluating concussions. A dark visor made that impossible. Clear visors are still legal today, and some players continue to wear them for eye protection, but tinted or color versions now required a documented medical exemption. That's why stars like LaDainian Tomlinson and Chris Canty got approval, while others were fine if they wore them. The ban frustrated players who saw tinted visors as harmless and part of their identity. College football still allows them, which means rookies often lose their signature look when they enter the NFL. To this day, if you see a colored visor on the field, it's almost always in warm-ups, practice, or video games, not live action. Overbuilt face mask, 2014. In the early 2010s, NFL linemen started showing up with face masks that looked more like cages than standard gear. Justin Tuck, Chris Canty, and a few others popularized designs with dozens of extra bars. Some look like medieval helmets, others look like something straight out of a sci-fi movie. Fans loved the intimidating look, and players said the extra bars helped protect against hands and elbows in the trenches. But the league stepped in. In 2014, the NFL officially banned all non-standard face masks, calling them unsafe. The masks were heavier than regulation models, put strain on the neck, and in some cases limited visibility. Equipment managers also complained about durability, since they bent or broke more easily under stress. After the ban, only players with documented medical needs were granted exemptions. That's why Canty, who had an eye condition, was able to wear his for a short time longer, but everyone else had to switch back to approved designs. It was another example of the NFL choosing safety and uniformity over individuality. The giant cage face mask disappeared almost overnight. Today, you'll still see creative tweaks, but nothing like those oversized, intimidating masks that briefly took over the trenches. Bandanas and non-team headgear, 2001. Through the 1990s, players like Deion Sanders made bandanas and head ties part of their signature style. Worn under the helmet, they stood out during warm-ups, post-game interviews, or when a helmet came off on the sideline. Some used them for sweat control, others for identity. But the NFL saw it differently. In 2001, the league banned bandanas and all non-team issued headgear. The official reason was uniformity. The NFL wanted every player's look to be consistent. No outside colors, no personal logos, and no freestyle accessories. From that point on, the only approved option was the league-issued skull cap, usually in team colors and with an NFL logo. Anything else was subject to fines. It wasn't a safety issue, it was an image issue. The league didn't want any individuality bleeding through its uniform policy, and in the years since, that rule has stuck. You won't see a player rocking a bandana under their helmet on Sundays anymore, even though it was once a staple of NFL swagger. Eye black messages, 2010. For decades, eye black was simple, just a strip under the eyes to cut down glare. But in the 2000s, players started turning it into a canvas. Some wrote Bible verses. Tim Tebow famously wrote John 3:16 during his Florida days. Others wrote personal notes, tributes, or even political messages. College football embraced it, and the NFL quickly followed with stars experimenting on Sundays. But by 2010, the league shut it down. The NFL banned all written messages on eye black, requiring it to remain plain. The official explanation was to maintain uniformity and avoid unauthorized personal messages on national broadcast. In reality, the league didn't want political, religious, or controversial statements slipping into primetime. Since then, eye black has been stripped back to its original form, just a blank smudge. No slogans, no scripture, no personality. It was another moment where the league drew the line between individuality and image control, and like many other accessory bans, the NFL's decision has stuck. Custom cleats, ongoing. Footwear has always been a way for players to show personality. Unique designs, bright colors, and custom art became more common as sneaker culture grew, but the NFL has kept a tight leash on what players can wear. The rule is clear. Cleats must match the team's primary colors and stay within uniform guidelines. Any player who steps out in something different risks a fine. And that's why stars like Odell Beckham Jr., DeAndre Hopkins, and Marshawn Lynch have all made headlines for breaking the rule. Their cleats range from cartoon art to flashy gold plating, and the league responded with penalties. The NFL eventually made a compromise. In 2016, they launched My Cause, My Cleats Week, giving players one game each season to wear custom designs in support of charities or causes they care about. Outside of that single week, individuality is still restricted. For players, cleats are more than just gear, they're expression. But in the NFL, expression takes a backseat to uniformity. Unless it's league approved, custom footwear stays off the field. Custom socks, ongoing. If there's one rule that surprises new fans, it's this one. The NFL even regulates socks. The league's uniform policy requires socks to fully cover the leg from shoe to pant leg. No bare skin can be shown, and socks must match the team's issued colors. In other words, no wild designs, no personal flair, and no halfway pulled up looks. Players have been fined for breaking it. Marshawn Lynch was hit multiple times for wearing mismatched or non-team socks. Other players have tried rolling them down or going with custom patterns only to be warned or penalized. The NFL's reasoning was twofold. First, consistency. Everyone has to look part of the same team. Second, image control. No unapproved logos or messages sneaking into broadcast. For players, it feels nitpicky. For the league, it's a matter of discipline. And while it doesn't get as much attention as visor bands or custom cleats, the sock rule has quietly been one of the most strictly enforced accessory fines in the NFL. Jewelry, ongoing. The NFL's stance on jewelry has always been strict. Hard jewelry is not allowed on the field. That includes chains, rings, earrings, and anything else that could pose a safety risk. The reasoning is simple. A necklace can get yanked, a ring can cut skin, and earrings can cause serious injury on contact. The league doesn't want anything on the field that can endanger a player or an opponent. But that hasn't stopped players from testing the rule. Odell Beckham Jr. has been fined for wearing flashy watches and chains during games. The most famous example came in 2017, when Aqib Talib ripped Michael Crabtree's gold chain straight off his neck during a heated rivalry game. It turned into one of the most memorable fights of the decade, and a perfect example of why the NFL doesn't allow it. Today, many players still wear jewelry during warm-ups or under pads, but once kickoff comes, the league expects it gone. The fines may seem small for millionaire athletes, but the NFL enforces this rule relentlessly. Jewelry might be a part of a player's identity off the field, but on Sunday, the league makes sure that it stays out of the game. Untucked jerseys and backplates, 2006. In 2006, the NFL tightened up its uniform rules and cracked down on players who wore untucked jerseys, or left their backplates exposed. It might seem minor, but the league saw it as part of protecting its image. Jerseys had to be tucked in at all times, socks had to cover the leg, and equipment like backplates, the protective padding that hangs out below the jersey, had to remain hidden. Plenty of players were fined for ignoring the rule. Wide receivers and defensive backs in particular liked the untucked look, which gave a looser street-style vibe. But the NFL insisted on clean, uniform appearances across the board. The message was clear. Individuality could not override league presentation. Even the smallest detail, like how a jersey sat on the waist, fell under NFL control. Today, officials still watch for it. A player caught with his jersey untucked can be sent to the sideline or fined later. It's one of those little-known rules that most fans never notice, but players deal with every Sunday. Knee and thigh pads, 2013. For years, players, especially wide receivers and defensive backs, skipped wearing knee pads and thigh pads. The reason was simple. They felt faster, lighter, and more agile without the extra bulk. Pads were technically recommended, but the league didn't enforce it. That changed in 2013. The NFL made knee pad and thigh pads mandatory for all players. The league's explanation was safety. Too many lower body injuries were happening in open space, and unpadded knees or thighs were taking the brunt of collisions. The reaction wasn't exactly positive. Many players complained the pads restrict movement or made them look too bulky. Some even compared it to going back to high school rules, since prep and college leagues had always required full padding. But the NFL didn't budge. Uniform inspections became part of game day. If a player was caught without the proper pads, they could be sent to the sideline or fined after the fact. Today, every player has to wear them. It's one of those accessories that used to be optional, and now it's simply part of the uniform. Neck rolls and cowboy collars, phased out. In the 1980s and 1990s, neck roll and cowboy collars were everywhere. Linebackers like Brian Bosworth and Brian Cox made them iconic. These thick foam rolls, or hard plastic collars, attached to shoulder pads, designed to prevent whiplash and protect the neck from violent collisions. They weren't just functional, they became a symbol of toughness. Big hitters wore them like armor, and they gave defenders an intimidating look that fit the era's physical style of play. But as equipment technology improved, the old school collar slowly disappeared. Newer shoulder pad designs started including built-in neck and head support, making the bulky add-ons unnecessary. By the mid-2000s, they were rare. By the 2010s, they were virtually gone. The NFL never issued an outright ban, but the league's equipment guidelines, combined with safety concerns and evolving pad technology, phased them out. Today, you almost never see them at any level of football. For older fans, the neck roll is part of the nostalgias of 90s football. For younger ones, it's just a relic of the past, a look that probably isn't coming back. Cast covers and oversized padding, 1990s through the 2000s. Playing through injuries has always been part of football, but in earlier eras, the way players protected those injuries sometimes looked extreme. One of the most common examples was the club, a cast wrapped in heavy padding that turned a broken hand into what looked like a weapon. Defenders in the 1990s and early 2000s often played with these massive padded clubs. They could still use their arms to swat, jam, and hit, even if they couldn't grip the ball. It became a familiar sight, linemen and linebackers with one giant clubbed arm charging off the edge. But the NFL eventually cracked down. Cast and braces were still allowed, but they had to be fully padded and kept to a size that wouldn't give them an unfair advantage. Oversized clubs were increasingly flagged or fined, especially if they were seen as dangerous to opponents. Today, players can still take the field with protective gear after an injury, but the padding requirements are much stricter. Casts must be fully covered in soft material, and anything that looks oversized or weapon-like is quickly disallowed. It was another step in the league's effort to balance toughness with safety. The era of giant padded clubs is gone, replaced by streamlined braces and softer protective gear. Overly customized helmets, always banned. When it comes to helmets, the NFL has never given players much freedom. Unlike cleats or gloves, helmets are considered part of the official uniform and must follow strict league guidelines. From the very beginning, teams have been required to use approved helmet shells and standard team colors, with league-approved decals and striping. Any attempt at customization, whether chrome finishes, personal paint jobs, or unique designs, has been shut down immediately. The NFL's reasoning is part safety, part branding. Safety-wise, customized paint or aftermarket shells could interfere with the helmet testing, durability, and certification. Branding-wise, the league wants players to look uniform, with no off-brand visuals making it on the broadcast. There have been a few close calls. In the 2010s, some players experimented with glossy chrome helmets, alternate finishes, or different colored shells during practice. But once game day came, they were required to wear the standard issue. Even throwback helmets are tightly regulated. Until 2022, teams were only allowed one shell color all season. That meant throwback uniforms had to be adjusted to fit the current helmet. Only recently did the NFL relax that rule to allow a second league-approved alternate shell. So while cleats and gloves may allow some personality, helmets remain untouchable. The NFL has made it clear: no player individuality, no personal paint jobs, and no deviations from the approved design. Foreign logos and brands, ongoing. The NFL's uniform policy doesn't just cover colors and styles, it controls branding down to the smallest detail. Players are not allowed to display any logos, slogans, or marks from companies that aren't officially licensed by the league. That means no stickers on helmets, no personal brand logos on gloves, no custom tape with designs, and no unapproved apparel showing under uniforms. Even when it comes to cleats and gloves, only league-approved manufacturers like Nike, Under Armour, and Adidas are allowed to appear on the field. Anything else earns a warning, a fine, or both. The reasoning is simple. The NFL protects its sponsorship deals. If a player shows off a brand that isn't a league partner, it undermines official contracts worth hundreds of millions of dollars. The league also insists on uniformity, every player presenting the same clean, controlled image. Plenty of players have tested the limits. Some wore custom undershirts with personal slogans, others taped wrists or ankles with off-brand designs, and some tried slipping in logos of companies they had endorsement deals with. Almost all were fined. The NFL keeps one exception: My Cause, My Cleats Week, where players can promote charities. Outside of that, foreign logos and personal branding are strictly prohibited. It's one of the clearest examples of NFL prioritizing its shield and its business partners above player individuality. Ice shields with patterns and graphics, early 2000s ban. In the early 2000s, visors and ice shields went through a creative phase. Instead of being just clear or tinted, some players began experimenting with custom patterns and graphics. Flames, flags, team logos, even camouflage designs started showing up on visors during games and practices. The look was popular with fans, and for players, it was another way to stand out. but the NFL didn't see it that way. Very quickly, the league banned all pattern or graphic eye shields. The reasoning was twofold: visibility and image control. Officials argued that certain designs could interfere with a player's vision, and the league also wanted to prevent unapproved logos or distracting visuals from slipping onto national broadcast. By the mid-2000s, the crackdown was complete. Only plain clear visors were fully approved. Tinted visors required medical exemptions, and pattern shields disappeared altogether. Today, you'll still see creative eye shields in college football or in warm-ups, but once the game kicks off on Sundays, they're gone. The NFL keeps visors strictly regulated. No logos, no patterns, no graphics. Just clear or, with special approval, tinted. It was one of the fastest accessory bans the league has ever handed down, and another reminder of how tightly the NFL controls its on-field image. The NFL rules on accessories show one thing clearly: the league values control. Some bans exist for safety, but many are about image, sponsorships, and uniformity. From tinted visors to socks to eye black, individuality is often taken a back seat. So what do you think? Which of these bans makes sense, and which one went too far? Let me know in the comments.